Okay, picking up, where were we? Okay, countdown timer in text effect. Okay, so a new developer, Jennifer, she hopped in, she needed some changes to the countdown in the text effect and jumped in and made. Basically, she added, I think she did this, I think she did the date formats and the like. I can't remember exactly which ones she added, but she added some additional formats here. To be honest, these things to date, etc., aren't particularly helpful because obviously xLIghts will render this at the time you create your FSCQ file. Sometimes having seconds or minutes, you might have an animation that runs between songs and you want people to know how long it is until the next song starts. So this stuff kind of makes sense. But to date, really doesn't make a huge amount of sense. It's more sensible to either do that in the xScheduler or in the Falcon Pi Player, who both have, the Falcon's got plugins which will do that sort of thing, and xScheduler has that sort of thing built into it. But yeah, those countdown effects are in there. I must admit, I don't know which ones she added versus which ones were already there. When you do that, she's added some hints here about how to actually do it. Of course, much like the transitions up here, it only appears for a limited amount of time. So I don't know, screen print it while it's up. Make sure the list box is growable. That's been lost in time. I have no idea which list box he's talking about. Start all jobs. Okay, so this release was a time when we actually started to really work on performance of xLIghts, and so there was a bunch of work done both then and in January to try and clean up performance of rendering. And there's a number of sequences that people have had that are taking less than half the time that they used to take to render. And that's through some smarter uses of the threading and recognizing that we weren't taking full advantage of your PC, and now we do. Enhance, allow 180 degrees trees to rotate. So what he means by this is if you come in here and draw a tree, you can see that's a 360-degree tree, but we can make that a 180. And obviously it's facing front on, but it doesn't have to. There's a rotation that we can do here. Oh, is it that one? Which one is it? Oh. No, that's right. No, yeah, that should be it. I set that to 40. Yeah, there you go. So they are rotated at 40 degrees, and you can see that the trees held its 180 shape precisely as a result of that, and never used to do that. So that was the fix or the enhancement that Dan added. Shutter support to the DMX model. Look, let's touch a little bit on the DMX model. I'm going to be the first to admit I have a limited understanding of the DMX model. The DMX model here, this is the moving head version. You have a number of options about how you want it to display. So there's the top-down look at it. There's the side-on look at it. And the 3D one is obviously the most impressive because it looks like it's there. Here's the skull. The skull, and there's something, I think I have to set that to 400. There you go. There's some default problems with the skull right now that I know Gil needs to get back to. You need to set the number of channels to 18, and you need to drop the degrees of rotation down in order to get it to look right. Otherwise it doesn't display properly. So that's how you draw those models. You can then go and create a sequence based on them. And let's do DMX1 first. So to use them, you need the DMX effect, which is up here. And this is our light. And the secret to using the DMX effect is to use value curves. So you can manually change things. I'm willing to bet this hasn't been set up properly. Yeah. So you need to go and allocate the channels that you're going to use for each of these. And that's going to vary according to the configuration of your particular DMX moving light, if that's what you've got. So that's the shutter channel that he added in this particular release. And so now when I come over here and I move that channel around, you can see it's rotating it around. That one doesn't seem to do a great deal. Okay, that one's going to swing it over the top. Okay, you can obviously set the color. We should be able to set the color. I don't think I've set my color channels up. Oh, there. I've set the color channel up there. So that changes the red, the green, and the blue. Now there's, oops, layout. I thought it picked it up from the color, but obviously it's not. I'm sure there's a way to do that. But the other thing you obviously want to do is you want to do set curves. Sorry, let's do sawtooth. So that over time, the model moves over the duration of the effect. And that's how you drive for movement of the effects. You can do a similar thing with the face. Here, of course, you've got 18 channels to worry about. In this case, yeah, getting everything in exactly the right place takes a bit of effort. And to be honest, I doubt anyone's going to manually control their skull. What they're more likely to do is to import the VSA files in and apply those against that particular model. In order to do that, you need to come up and do an import effects, go over here, choose the VSA files. Of course, everyone has a VSA file or two laying around. Oh, it didn't like my VSA file. Anyway, yeah, so typically you would buy those VSA files to import and use with your skull. So I'm not going to cover that in any greater detail. I think Gil's got some good videos on both the moving headlights and also on the skull. And I'm sure as he finalises the skull stuff, because I still think he's polishing some of it up, I'm sure he'll put out a better educational video that covers the how rather than just showing you what can be done, which would be good. Don't worry about that. Okay. Optimize logging. No, I wrote that. Connect stuff we're not doing. Sequence checker we're not doing. Add the ability to import timing tracks and lyric tracks from other sequences. Yeah, so obviously for those of you who are importing shows like particularly Logan's and the like, it's, you know, people are quite familiar with bringing effects in, but xLIghts sequences. And we'll grab this one. And that was all done down here where you had to go and map all of your models, etc. But what Dan's added is the ability for you to choose timing tracks out of that sequence as well and bring those in. Which previously the only way you could do it was go and open up the sequence as it was given to you, do a right click on the timing track, export the timing track, and then you would create an X timing file, which you would then come over and import. This obviously makes it a lot easier to bring the timing tracks in with the sequence, and that makes a lot of sense because usually what you want to do is add some additional compensatory effects on some of your other models that maybe you couldn't find something to import into, and so having the timing tracks there makes it a lot easier to do that additional enhancements as well. Okay, moving on up. Another performance, or in this case drawing enhancement, and the ability to flip the channel numbers in the custom model horizontally and vertically. So we've got a custom model here somewhere. This one here I think was our custom model. So in the model data, you can come in here and you can flip the numbers around, flip it horizontally, flip it vertically. That can be useful if you've accidentally gone in, put all your numbers in, and then realized that you were looking at numbers the wrong way and that you pushed your pixels in from the wrong side, and you just need the numbers reversed around. It does a very simple change on your model. Don't forget you also have your wiring view over here. And you can export that wiring view, which lets you blow that image up to a lot larger or potentially print it out, etc. Before you go and wire your models up to make sure you wire them correctly. Because so many people think the numbers here are from the back, they push all their pixels in, they find that they've got them wrong. So that's why those settings are there. Add a wrap option to the fill effect. So the fill effect is a very simple effect, but very useful with the value curve. That's been there a while now. So very simple, just lets you define the position, how much the fill is, but it's now got a wrap mode, and I cannot remember, to be honest. Is it oh yeah, not that one. There's a sine wave. See, it's not going to do it. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not actually sure exactly what the wrap mode does. Possibly it's got something to do with the bands and the skips. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask Gil about that one. A couple more bugs. You can tell it was getting closer to Christmas. We were fixing bugs more than we were adding stuff. Touch bar support. For those of you that have got brand new Macs with the fancy new touch bars, xLIghts does include some touch bar support. Dan put out a video at about this time, which was sometime I think in either late November or early December. Yeah, middle of December. He put out a video which demonstrated the touch bar support that he's added. So I don't have a Mac, so I can't show that. Shifting all the effects. So yeah, this sometimes happens, particularly if you've got a sequence which you know, maybe your audio file doesn't quite match, it's got an extra long lead in, etc., and I want to shift everything across in the whole sequence. You can go up to the edit menu and click on shift effects, and I can shift everything, I don't know, right by 1 second, which I believe, did I not read that right? Was that, hang on, I bet you that's in milliseconds. Yeah, number of milliseconds, that's why it didn't move. So I have to put 1,000 in, and you can see it shifted everything across, including all of the timing of tracks and everything else got shifted across by 1 second. And I think I can shift it back using a -1000, and there it jumps back to 0. So a simple way to shift everything in an entire sequence file. Again, we're not going to do the configs. More enhancements to check sequence. Well, that was interesting. Add flip to the color curve. Oh, okay, yeah. So in the color curve dialog here, I can flip it, which just basically reverses the colors around. Very similar to what I showed you up here with the palettes, where you can flip the palettes around. Sometimes you want two color curves, which are the mirror image of one another, and that's an easy way to do it. And don't forget that you can export your color curves. Give it a name. That's interesting, not sure why it didn't. Why did that not work? Oh, because I'm in the wrong folder. Sorry, I'm not in my show folder. If I come back here into Florida, and I can call this one Fred. And now you can see the color curve appears down here. So again, I can pull it back up at a moment's notice should I want to use it. You can also share those. The color curves are easy to share. They've got names. Technically, palettes can be shared. The challenge with palettes is that they are stored inside the palettes folder, but they're not given a sensible name, which makes them kind of hard to share. But technically you could. Fireworks fire with timing mark. I mean, I quite like the fireworks effect, but sometimes the way the firework effect works by default is it randomly distributes the fireworks over the duration of the effect, which is all well and good, but I usually want the fireworks to look like they're going off with the music, and that can be kind of hard to do. Now, there is the fire with music, and what that lets you do is set a threshold for the intensity of the music, and when the music reaches that threshold, it will cause the firework to go off. That's kind of okay. It can be an easy way to get it going, but I found I was a little bit unsatisfied with how accurate it was. And so instead what I did was I added the ability for you to control it so that the firework goes off as it goes across the timing track. And so what that will do, if we play this, oh, hang on, I haven't chosen the timing track. What are we on? Detail. Okay. So now as it plays, oh, it would help if that part of the timing track, we need to go up and do shift effects. Minus 20, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a bit better. Sorry, it was past the end of the sequence. And so now, when I play it, as it goes across each timing mark, a firework goes off. And so you can go through and mark up your song for the beats that you want the fireworks to go off, and the firework effect will go off with your music. And it does look pretty good compared to what it otherwise looked like. Okay, the -W command line switch. This is a switch which, to be honest, I installed, I created. It's like that R switch that we talked about. But if I go into my program files, cd/ program files x86 cd xLIghts. Okay, so if I run xLIghts.exe, so this is how I can run it with the -R switch. If I run it with the -W switch like this, what it will do is it will go in and erase all of the xLIghts settings and make it like a fresh install. And so if you've got a problem with xLIghts where it just refuses to start, and even when you reinstall it, it still refuses to start, running it with the -W command line switch can sometimes help us recover that situation by erasing all of the settings and making it like a true fresh install, which an install doesn't actually do. It doesn't wipe your settings. Otherwise, you would lose things like your show folder, and all of the settings up here in the menu are all stored on Windows in the registry and on Mac somewhere else. But this -W option will go in and erase all of those settings and set them right back to the factory defaults. Okay, opening a sequence check for a newer X backup file. If it exists, prompt the user to use it instead. Okay, so I can demo this, but it takes a little bit of time to demonstrate. So the concept is this. You're opening up a sequence and you're working on it, and you work on it for a while, an automatic backup occurs, maybe a few of them occurs, and then you get a crash. Okay, now the X backup file exists, but in my experience, a lot of people didn't realize it existed. They didn't realize that there was a backup file there that they could go back to. And so now what happens when xLIghts next starts is it will look at the X backup file for the sequence that you're trying to load. And if there is an X backup file that is newer than the XML file, what it says is, well, hang on a second, maybe the user just had a crash and maybe they want to load the backup file rather than the original file. And at that point, it will allow the user to choose which one they load. And so it makes it a lot easier to recover from a crash and get back to the last autosave point rather than going back to your last save point, which might have been some time ago. Now, when it does that, it also backs everything up before it does it, because once it's recovered the X backup file, it overwrites the XML file. So in theory, you've lost it. And if you recover the X backup file and suddenly realize, actually, that's not what I wanted the original file, there will be a backup sitting in your backup folder that you can go and grab, which will have the original thing. So we kind of protect you from losing anything, regardless of what action you take. Spatial color curves. So this is the sort of thing that we discuss on the Wednesday night in the US calls. We discuss various features. So color curves are pretty cool. So here's the color curve on the bar, and we talked about it before, how it changes over time. And let's go and not make this a random color curve. Let's make it a gradient. Actually, let's choose one of the standard ones. Okay, and so over the course of time, that color changes. And that's great, except sometimes you actually want to do something slightly different. And so we've added this icon here, which is, in this case, is a clock, and it's a clock because over time the color's changing. But if you click on the clock, it changes, and now it's become an arrow from left to right, and you can see that that color curve has been applied within the bar in a left to right direction. If you click it again, it goes from top to bottom. If you click it again, it goes from right to left, and if you click it again, it goes from bottom to top. So now within something that was otherwise a solid color, you can change the color and the way it's applied. Now, it only works for a limited number of effects right now. It works for the on effect, the bars effect. I think it works for the pinwheel effect and the spirals effect. So here it is applied to the spirals, and you can see that this particular spiral here is actually a color curve. Okay, so you can get that a rainbow spiral and things like that. With pinwheel, it's interesting because with pinwheel, if I make it thick and let's use the new render method because that gets rid of all the gaps. You can see that it works slightly differently. Instead of the arrow being left, right, up or down, this one is going diagonally inwards. And consequently, you see the color is actually going diagonally inwards. Let's move it down onto our matrix where it's a little easier to see. So you can see that the color curve has been applied from outwards to in. If you click on it again, it's inwards to out. And then you get the radial ones where it's applied radially around the circle and vice versa. And then back to time. Oops, back to time. Okay, so now on a limited range of effects where, to be honest, there was only really a limited range of effects where this made a lot of sense. You can now apply these spatial color curves and create some really different effects that, and to be honest, I mean, this rainbow, it's good because it stands out, but the more powerful sorts of things that you can do with it is it lets you, sorry, oh, that's interesting. I don't actually have a simple way to go and reset it. But one of the other interesting things that you could do, for instance, is if you made this black, so you can create some interesting edge effects and the like, or change how sharply the edge gradient occurs. So you can create a one-sided blade, for instance. So you've got the red trailing to black on one of them and things like that. So yeah, if you apply it in clever ways, you can get some very interesting effects with spatial color curves. Resetting the buffer panel on new effects, and I say buffer panel twice. I actually mean the timing panel for the second one. So the default, so I'm going to uncheck these two checkboxes up here because these checkboxes control this thing. So the way xLIghts has always worked in the past is as you go around and you drop effects, fire's a really bad one to choose. So hang on, let me grab it properly. So if I grab a bars effect here, and I don't know, let's set a sub buffer for that bars effect. If I come up here now and I grab, I don't know, spirals and drop it down, you notice that it's carried forward that sub buffer from one model to another. It also carries forward all of these settings up here, all the ins and out fade transition times and the like. And sometimes that's exactly what you want it to do. And sometimes it isn't. And when it isn't, it can be quite an insidious bug because you'll end up painting 4 or 5 other effects only to realize that you forgot that you'd set a fade out transition on one of them. And now all of the effects have fade out transitions. And the only way to go back and fix it is to go in each one manually and zero it out again, which kind of gets fairly annoying fairly quickly. So now what you have is this option up here to cause it to reset between effects. And what that means is, so we're currently on the bars effect. So if I go and grab another bars effect and drop it down, nothing changes. It's still got that sub buffer. But if I go up and I grab a pinwheel now and drop it down, it resets everything. And the pinwheel is applied across the whole thing. Oh, I'm outside the show duration. Okay, but it's gone and applied it across the whole thing. And it did that because I changed the effect. I went from a bars effect to a pinwheel effect, so it reset everything automatically. If I now go and drop another pinwheel effect, it will keep whatever my settings happen to be on this panel. It'll keep whatever settings I happen to have on this panel, but it'll reset these ones back to their defaults. So for those people that, when you need it, having the ability to keep the settings regardless of which effect you're on is really useful. But I tend to think that 9 times out of 10, what you really want to do is have it reset whenever you change an effect, knowing that you can always go back and turn it on if you do need that mode. Okay. Okay, you saw just a second ago the pinwheel effect and how there's an enhancement that lets you change the way it renders so it doesn't leave gaps. We've talked about spatial color curves, and interestingly, that gets us to Christmas. Let's quickly see how much we can get through of this before we run out of time. Reset to defaults. Okay, so resetting to defaults, whenever you switch from one model to another, what we like to do is reset all of the settings here back to the default. So for instance, I don't know, let's take our pinwheel here. Let's change the number of arms to be a lot. And if I go and drop another pinwheel, it's going to copy the settings, right? Which is what xLIghts has always done. And if you're dropping the same thing many times, that's exactly what you would like it to do. But sometimes you want it to go back to the default. And the way to get it to go back to the default is just to click on another effect and then come back to pinwheel and drop it again, and it's back in its default settings. Now, if I want these settings again, all I have to do is click on the effect, then go back up here and drop that effect again, and it still copies them. But so it copies as long if you drop the same effect that you've just clicked on again, it will copy all the settings forward. If you click on a different effect and then drop a different effect to the one that you had previously, all the settings will be reset back to their factory defaults, enabling you to always start from a common base when you want to, but giving you a quick and easy way to reset it. Now, what some people don't also understand, you can also update the settings across multiple effects using this update button here. So if I was to select all of my pinwheels, I think that's a pinwheel. No, it's not. That's a pinwheel. So if I was to select several of them and click the update button, that will actually apply those settings across multiple effects. And this update button up here does a similar thing with the colors. There is no equivalent on any of these other dialog boxes. I've looked at it. There is no easy way to add an update button and make it obvious and easy to decide exactly what you want to update, because just because you want to update the sub buffer doesn't mean you want to copy all your roto zoom settings across, or your render styles, or whatever else across. So it all got too hard. And so now we have those sets of consistent behaviors when you move amongst the models. I think I am out of time, so I am going to stop that one there.